If you could eat a single meal for the rest of your life, what would it be? My first thought is something like a burger or a pizza or even like a sandwich, because they're so customizable that I would be able to get a lot of different experiences with those choices, right? Then you have to ask yourself, okay, well, is a panini a burger? I don't know about that. Is a meatball sub a burger? I don't think so. A veggie pizza? That's really stretching it. That's one question, right? The next question is would you do it? If you had the choice, if somebody came to you and said, you can have one meal for the rest of your life guaranteed, or you can keep going as you're going, what would you choose? I don't think I would suggest that I want to have the same meal every day for the rest of my life. That's personally not what I want. And maybe some of you are seeing where I'm going with this. For many years, I played Dungeons & Dragons exclusively. I played D&D for 5 or 6 years. I had no desire to play another game. I had no want. I would always see these TikToks of people who are very disparaging towards people who just purely play D&D and don't try any other TTRPGs. And I still disagree with that approach a lot. But I am, however, going to tell you how over time, I think that I have changed. And specifically how I think cravings feed cravings. And once you break a craving, you widen your palate a little bit more to be ready for other things. And one thing is not better than another. I'm just going to tell you about my journey of playing D&D, some of my observations about D&D itself, and then kind of why I now really like Cypher System. And let's get into it. See, I think a lot of this has to do with where Dungeons & Dragons came from. See, originally, back in the day, there were war games. I mean, and conceptual and abstract games have been all the way back since, whatever, thousands of years ago. But in the 19th and 20th century, war games became very popular. And so you would essentially be, moving around your ships or your tanks or your units, and you would have infantry fight each other. Eventually, kind of a medieval style war game became popular in the rounds. And a derivation of that was chainmail. Chainmail was the idea of a war game, but instead of commanding many units and squadrons, you were playing as a single medieval soldier. And then, eventually, Dungeons & Dragons kind of took that idea and added a little bit of the fantasy spice to it, and that's where originally you get Dungeons & Dragons. And there are some holdovers from that as well. You see, it was important in things like chainmail and early Dungeons & Dragons to have you would have a weight encumbrance. You had to keep very good track of your inventory. I mean, the idea, half of the challenge of going and exploring a dungeon was not only vanquishing and killing all of the evil goblins that were inside that were protecting their hoard of gold, but also literally the logistics of how are you now going to transport thousands of pounds of gold to the outside world. I think that's originally where the spell Tensor's floating disc came from, or at least it was very much used as the gold transport disc that would just swing in and out and carry hundreds of pounds of gold. And these are all fine things. Some people really enjoy that kind of survival aspect of a game with a lot of gritty realism, or even not even just realism, but just that type of resource management. I think, though, Dungeons & Dragons is not leaning into that at all, right? It very much seems like it's trying to lean more into the fantastical role-playing aspect of you can kind of make any character you want to in this amazing setting. But you're always going to be confined to the core elements of Dungeons & Dragons because it is derived from chainmail. It's just part of its DNA. Let me give you a little bit of an analogy. I don't know about you guys, but I used to be obsessed with G.I. Joes when I was a kid. Now, because I'm an adult and I don't know where those are anymore, I went to the Dollar Tree and got these beautiful little fellas. But they work. This is similar to what I had when I was a kid. I mean, they have some accessories. They've got little backpacks you can plug into their back. They've got some guns that you can try to make them hold. I actually think I break one accidentally. They had these aliens as well, and these are exactly the types of things that I would have mixed together. But at the end of the day, when you're playing with these G.I. Joes and aliens, there's really only a few types of stories that you can tell without really kind of doing a lot of effort and racking your imagination to make a different story. They are army men, right? They're military. There's an alien. This is all going to make you feel a certain type of thing. And really, the other big toy I had when I was a kid was Lego. Now, actually, I got these from the Dollar Tree as well. I literally couldn't help but make a little spaceship. That's what I used to do all the time when I was a kid, is I was make spaceships. But the cool thing about Legos is not necessarily the thing that you're intended to make with them, but rather it's their flexibility as a toy. See, there is no limit. Even though maybe they are a lower resolution, if that makes sense, right? They're not as finely described as the G.I. Joes are if you wanted to play with army men, but as a toy, they also allow for greater flexibility for what you are going to use them for. And I started out with a spaceship here, but I decided, you know what, maybe I want to make some kind of like little tower and castle. And this is how I imagine Cypher System and Dungeons & Dragons. If you're looking to play with G.I. Joes and do army men, there's nothing better than G.I. Joes. But if you want to stretch that creativity a little bit, if you want a framework that allows you to mix and match and tell your story, well, Cypher System is made, literally baked, to give you that flexibility. That is fundamental to the system. It is a framework, not its own narrative device, if that makes sense. But that's all an analogy, right? It's not one for one. Let me take you to my bookshelf and I'll show you the books and kind of a way of thinking about this a little bit less abstractly and more concretely. So here is my current D&D collection. Now, I used to have 90% of the 5e books, but over time I've sold some of them just because I don't use them as much and I own them digitally. But obviously, here are the ones that I've kept. I've got the 3 core books. I've got some of the player and rules expansions here with that box set, lore books, and I've also got some stuff from MCDM and a great book called Weird Wasteland from WebDM, but they're all based on the presupposition of you are playing in a fantasy setting. Now, that means that you can go to space, right? You can travel across the planes, but you are always going to be a fantasy-based character. Now, this is my Cypher collection of books. Right here, we have the base rulebook. This is how you play Cypher System and everything you need to start your first game. All of the white books are the core setting books, kind of. We have The Stars Are Fire, which is space adventure. We have Rust and Redemption, which is essentially nuclear fallout setting. Claim to Sky, you can be superheroes. We All Are Mad Here, which is kind of a surreal fantasy setting. Stay Alive, which is a horror setting, and Godforsaken, which is your more traditional fantasy setting. So right there, we have a lot. And again, this isn't like base Cypher is set in modern times, or base Cypher is set in medieval times, or base Cypher is set as an ancient whatever. Base Cypher has rules, some baseline rules for several different settings. So right in its table of contents, you can see that it gives you some baseline fantasy, modern, science fiction, horror, romance, superheroes, post-apocalyptic, fairy tale, and historical genres, and how specific devices for those, specific mechanics for those things, and advice on how to make Cypher work for these genres. These, obviously, some of them correlate with that, and they just give you even more expanded rules on how to do that. But even moving further on, we have expanded worlds in the bestiary, which are additional rules. The Origin, which is kind of like a futuristic, almost like a cyberpunk, but a little bit more like cyberpunk meets X-Men type of reality. Unmasked, which is kind of like a Stranger Things. The Path of the Planebreaker, which is essentially Planescape. The Weird, which is more of a tables book, kind of like a reference. And then these 3, which I'm going to talk about in this video. The Strange, Old Gods of Appalachia, and First Responders. See, these books, these 3 huge, heavy tomes, are based off of the original Cypher book, just like you would get with the Mythic Odysseys of Theros and Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. However, they come with some base mechanics that make certain challenges or play styles much more engaging. I'm going to go through these one by one really quick, giving you a very high level overview, and then I'm going to tell you how I plan on incorporating them all into the same game. For the first book here, we have First Responders. Now, in this game, you do not deal with the fantastic. It is all based in reality, and really, it's not even combat-oriented necessarily. You are literally first responders. So you're EMS, you could play as police or detectives, or you are firefighters or firemen. And you go and you help people from disasters and catastrophes like floods, fires. It gives you maps and rules on how you literally fight against these challenges using your abilities. Next, we have the Strange. The Strange is almost like a X-Files setting amped up to the next level. It has these mechanics called incursions, which essentially allow you and others to travel back and forth through these dimensional rifts. It's a very fantastical but mostly science fiction based setting. Then we have Old Gods of Appalachia. Now, this actually started as a podcast, and it's been going on for quite a few years, but it's a dark, southern, mysterious horror setting. And there are all of these supernatural events happening in the backwoods and the deep rural areas of Appalachia. So my goal is to take these three unique settings and ideas and combine them mechanically and thematically to make my own unique setting. And here's my thoughts. I want the base setting of where the characters are to be from the Old Gods of Appalachia. And then on top of that, I want to incorporate the idea of these incursions from the Strange. And I'm thinking about making them kind of like a disaster idea, which would come from first responders. So essentially, while in this haunted Old Gods of Appalachia region, these little pockets of incursions start to come in, which either allow things to travel in or the characters to travel out, and they can fight these things using some of the disaster mechanics from first responders. Almost think about it like how those incursions were from Dragon Age Inquisition. The Fade. I was actually just Googling it because I couldn't remember what it was specifically. Yes, the Fade is kind of like these green crackling like summoning spots that, you know, no spoilers or whatever, but you have to essentially fight them off and close them. And the cool thing about this is you could expand this as far as you want to. The only thing that was really even a little bit of a stretch was kind of the first responders book and the disaster mechanics, but even then it wasn't that hard to implement. And that's the idea of the Lego analogy, right? When you're playing with G.I. Joes, you can add in Barbie, and that's fine. It's going to look a little funny maybe depending on the game that you're playing, but it's okay. You can do that, and you just have to use and stretch your imagination a little bit. But when you're playing with Lego, pretty much any piece clicks into any other piece. If you wanted to use first responders and the stars are fire to make like a galactic disaster response game, that would be super cool. And actually, I really like that idea. Or if you wanted to mix We're All Mad Here with the Claim the Sky superheroes book and make some kind of fantasy, Feywild superhero game, that's another really cool idea. And it might take a little bit of, thought at the beginning of it, but really mechanically, it's all going to clip together very easily. Now, I just want to be very clear. I'm not trying to tell you that you need to play Cypher System. That's not what I'm saying. And dear goodness, if I hear one more person try to give me GURPS propaganda, I think I'm going to lose it. All I'm telling you is my experience. I played Dungeons & Dragons for more than half a decade straight, and I had no desire to play anything else. I took a little bit of a break, and I didn't really want to play that anymore. I just was done with it. And I played this game kind of during that break, and I had a lot of fun with it. And I tried to go back to D&D, but it just really didn't scratch the itch I was wanting it to. I'm sure there's going to be times when I'm craving some Dungeons & Dragons, and nothing does it quite as good as Dungeons & Dragons. But there's going to be other times when I want to try other things, like Cypher System, or I've got some more books on my shelf, which I haven't really even dug into yet, like Delta Green, or I've got Monster of the Week waiting for me, or Night's Black Agents. All those books and games look like they're going to be so much fun. I just haven't tried them out yet. So what do we end with here? Well, I would say this. If you are not having fun with D&D, if you feel like you are continually getting frustrated by the table or by certain things that are going on or just by certain restrictions or whatever, maybe take a break. Take a break and do something else for a little bit. And then after that, ask yourself and consider, do I want to keep playing D&D or do I want to try something different? And go from there. And with all of this, I do want to thank Monty Cook Games. They sent me these 3 books for free. Now, as you can tell, I'm still a big supporter of them, and I do think you should try their system. So this video was not sponsored at all. These were more for review, and I think in the future I want to get into more specific reviews on these 3 books. But I also want to give a shout out, because they sent me these for free, that there is a new Old Gods of Appalachia book coming out, and that looks really exciting as well. This is probably one of my favorite settings that are kind of coming into the Cypher system. But with all that being said, thank you so much for watching. I hope you like this video. If you like this video, then please leave a like, hit subscribe. I used to put out new videos every week, now a little bit less often than that, but I think that there's going to be something coming out in the future that you'll probably want to see. And if you're interested in hearing what I've been doing over the past few months, well, then maybe I'll put out a video explaining my absence as well and my future plans for the channel. But thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Good I haven't done this in a while. Good luck out there, adventurer.